Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I cannot believe it has been an entire year since I started this channel. I got such an overwhelmingly positive response throughout my entire first year on BookTube, and I just want to thank you all so much for the love and the support that you guys have shown me. I really did not expect to have this many followers after only a year. I'm just blown away. I didn't really think that many people would care about my opinions on horror novels, and I just cannot thank you guys enough. And I am so excited to go and dive through my best books of 2021. The very first video I ever did was my best books of 2020, and I am just ecstatic to be here again. I feel like I should explain how I do my rating systems. If you've been on my channel before, you know that all of my books are rated on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. Pretty much though, they are judged between 2 to 5 stars. To get a 1-star rating from me, I have to literally be forced to finish a book I would have DNF'd. And the only times that I would ever, really be forced to finish a book that I want to DNF is if I'm in like a book club, or it was like a gift that someone gave me and I feel obligated to read through it. Or like books that I had to read in school and stuff. So it's very, very rare. I will say that I did give one book this year a 1-star rating, and that was Anne Rice's The Witching Hour. Rest in peace, Anne Rice, but I did hate that book. I was gonna talk about books that I really, really didn't like in this video, but I don't really want to do that. I want to just uplift the authors that really impressed me and share those with you. So again, most of my ratings will be done on a scale from 2 to 5. You will see some books on my list today that are 4-star books that made it on, and I had a lot of 5-star books that didn't make it on this year. My rating system is a little strange. I like to think back on books that stuck with me or impressed me or kept me second guessing myself and really had like a lasting impression on me. That's why books like Hex and Let the Right One In made it onto my top books of 2020 last year, even though they were 4-star reads, and there were many other books that were just fun, unproblematic 5-star reads that I had. I did find Hex and Let the Right One In, even though they had their moments that were very questionable, to be very thought-provoking, very different, very unique. And as I looked back on the year, those were the books that stuck out to me the most. So we will see that again this year, not as drastically as last year. If you guys want to check out my video from last year, I'll have it linked up above. In case you were wondering, my top book of 2020 was Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. So give you those kind of books as like a hint to what I'm going to have tonally for this list. So before I jump into my top 10 books, I do want to give a shout out to The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. This is a contemporary gothic atmospheric story set, I believe, in an abandoned town in Sweden. It is technically, I guess, Nordic noir of a sense. This almost made it onto my top 10 list. It was really teetering on the edge, and I really wanted to give it a shout out because I did think it was very fun and very unique and really turned me on to Camilla Sten's writing. It's very much Midsummer meets Blair Witch Project with a gothic tone overall, as the book graciously proclaims. And I really, really loved this, and I just wanted to give this a shout out because I do think it is worth picking up and worth reading. And this was a 4-star read for me. The two other books that almost made it on this list were The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor and The Snowman by Joe Nesbo. Great, like, crime whodunit Nordic noir for The Snowman, and then The Chalk Man is a very intricate coming-of-age story. Both were 5-star reads for me. I really, really enjoyed them, but they didn't have as much of a lasting impression on me as some of the other books on this list, which is why they did not make it. All right, so let's start off with book number 10. So coming in 10th place is No One Gets Out Alive by Adam Neville. Adam Neville is one of those authors that I know can write scary, scary shit. However, he sometimes fails to land it all the way for me. The Red Ending was a huge disappointment for me. The Ritual was an amazing book halfway through and then really just went off the rails at the end. So this was the first Adam Neville book that I've picked up that really, truly impressed me. It really scared me. It was dark, it was uncomfortable, it was grotesque, and I couldn't stop thinking about it after I finished it. Don't watch the movie that is based off of this book. It is god-awful, but this book is quite amazing. It is told in 2 different parts. The first part being about a woman who is trapped in what she believed is a boarding house, but is actually more of a prison, where she thinks she is about to be murdered by the landlord. I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. There are ghosts, there are supernatural, almost Lovecraftian cosmic horror gods in this. You know I hate cosmic horror, and the second half of this book is primarily cosmic horror focused, but I really, really enjoyed all of this. It is like 600 pages, but I read it very, very quickly. It is fast-paced. Again, it scared me. It is uncomfortable. It probably deserves a trigger warning for assault and violence against women. But it is one of the most original haunted house ghost stories I have read in a very, very long time, and I highly, highly recommend you check this one out. Coming in at number 9 is Darcy Coates' The Carol Haunt. This is the first 5-star read I have had from Darcy Coates. I adore Darcy Coates. I love her warm and cozy spin on the horror genre, and this one was definitely the scariest of her works. Until then, The Haunting of Ashburn House was my favorite thing by Darcy Coates, but this kind of spin on the H.H. Holmes narrative story, it's not like an H.H. Holmes retelling, but it is very inspired by the H.H. Holmes castle. This was just absolutely brilliant. It feels very akin to Richard Matheson's Hell House without all of the misogyny that is in Hell House. I was creeped out. I had so much fun with this. I just loved the mystery and intrigue, and it's just a very, very, very fun story about a group of thrown together misfits staying in a haunted house with a historical tour guide to kind of show them their way. And I can't stop singing the praises of this. I think Darcy Coates is such an amazing author. I think she does a lot of weird, fun, and original things, and can perfectly, perfectly, perfectly balance that creepy, cute aspect of horror. If you were fans of things like Halloween Town, Hocus Pocus growing up, this fits right in there with a slightly darker edge. It's like Hocus Pocus, but only for adults. I just absolutely adore Darcy Coates' work, and this I thought was absolutely brilliant. Coming in at number 8. Now this flip-flops between spot 7 and 8 for a little bit, but it did lose out to the 7th spot. But this is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I had never read Jane Eyre before. I wasn't aware that Jane Eyre was a gothic horror story. I wasn't aware that it was filled with some mind-boggling twists and turns and is just absolutely outrageous. And I loved every single moment of it. I think Jane Eyre is one of the pinnacle feminine characters in Gothic lit. I think she is such a role model. I think this is one of the most feminist books I have ever read, and I love that it's like a dark romance as well. I'm not really into romances, but I love the kind of dark shadow and secrecy that is all blended together with Jane Eyre. I will say my only grievance with this 5-star read is the very, very last page. I thought it was a strange angle to take for this conclusion, but I adore it. For those of you who do not know, this book follows Jane Eyre from her childhood all the way up until she, I guess, becomes like a full woman, and the trials and tribulations she has to face as being the orphaned daughter of a failed aristocratic family and thrown basically into servitude in order to make ends meet, and dark, strange, macabre things ensue, and there is an amazing romance in this, and I love that it is not a perfect romance. I love that it is, again, very dark, very mysterious, and takes the reader on so many different emotional journeys, while at the same time staying very true to the Gothic tradition of the sprawling, mysterious manner and the potential of ghosts to be present. I just blew me away. Couldn't believe I hadn't read it before. 10 out of 10 recommend Jane Eyre. I really hated Wuthering Heights, so I'm very happy the other Bronte sister impressed me, because Wuthering Heights, whew, good lord, was that difficult to get through. All right, and then the spot that did win out for number 7 is Ronald Malfi's Come With Me. This might be the only, no, that's not true. This is one of 2 books that was on my most anticipated books to read in 2021 list to actually make it onto this list. A lot of my most anticipated reads from the beginning of the year actually kind of disappointed me or underwhelmed me. This one blew me away. This is another one of Ronald Malfi's ghost stories. This deals heavily with processing grief after losing a loved one, and is also folded into a really cool, unique murder mystery. It is not a detective story though, it is just a murder mystery with lots and lots of ghosties. This is one of the most heartbreaking books I think I have ever read. Literally, I wanted to cry at the end of it. It is beautiful, it is incredible, and I really love how Malfi, and I say this all the time, is able to take cliche concepts in horror and really rewrite and redefine them. I think Malfi's concepts of ghosts, which he has used in other works as well, most notably Floating Staircase, I love that it is a consistent rule and setting for how ghosts can interact with the living, and I think the way that it is done in Come With Me is absolutely brilliant. If you want to read one of the most amazing and beautiful and heartfelt and heartbreaking ghost stories I've ever had my hands on, take a look at Come With Me. It is just mind-bogglingly insane, and I want to like tear up just thinking about the story. It's just so good. It's so good, and I love Ronald Malfi on this channel. So I just really want to sing his praises and get more people to know about how incredible of an author he is. All right, coming in at number 6 is another new indie author that I have slowly become obsessed with, and this is Malignant Summer by Tim Meyer. This is a very interesting, very long coming-of-age story set in the 90s in New Jersey, right on like one of those small towns in the Jersey Shore. And this, again, I love coming-of-age horror. I keep forgetting to say this. All of the books that I have said since No One Gets Out Alive are going to be 5-star reads. But Malignant Summer to me was a very unique but also cliche telling of the coming-of-age story. It is the story of a group of kids who live in a town where a lot of their peers are starting to get sick with cancer, and they believe it might be related to the chemical plant, and it turns into this kind of crazy, over-the-top cosmic horror extravaganza, I could say. I don't want to give too much away. Again, I do not like cosmic horror. This is very cosmic horror-y, but in a way that I can really relate to, that kind of overarching sense of existential dread where like the cosmic being comes out of nowhere at the very end is not present in this book. So if that's why you like cosmic horror, you won't find it in this book. This book is bleak though, this book is dark, and my favorite thing about this is a large portion of this novel is told from the perspective of our bully. I feel like in a lot of coming-of-age horror stories, the bully is kind of this just throwaway evil character. We get very much the Henry Bowers cliche from It. This does not do this. The bully character in this book is easily the most likable, relatable, intriguing character, and I wanted to read every possible moment about her. And yes, she is a girl, which I also thought was interesting. And if you like 90s nostalgia or you have ever been to the Jersey Shore, this book just nails that. So 10 out of 10 recommend Tim Meyer. This, I believe, is the fourth book I've read from Tim Meyer. And easily the best. It did just come out about 6 months ago, so this was a new release. Okay. Coming in at number 5 is Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Shizmar. This book took me on so many emotional journeys. Both this and Come With Me were in the same Nightworms package, and that Nightworms package clearly was the best of the year because it got 2 5-star reads out of me. This book blew me away. This is a crime drama told through the perspective of Richard Shizmar himself as he was living during the time that a serial killer was raging in his hometown in small town Maryland. I am not going to say anything beyond that because I think reading this book and experiencing this book is a must. Go into this book as blind as humanly possible and you will get so much out of it. I knew next to nothing about this book except for the fact that Richard Shizmar owns Cemetery Dance Publications and has collaborated with Stephen King before, so you know he's a good writer. read this. That's all I can say. It is one of the best crime books I have ever read, and I think once you get to the end, you will see and understand why there's so many twists and turns in this novel that the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I'm going to give everything away that went into it. So if you are interested in true crime, if you are interested in small town serial killers, check this book out. It will sweep you off your feet, I guarantee it. All right, coming in at number 4, I know this is a very old book, but we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is another classic novel, very rooted in the Gothic horror tradition, and I can't believe it took me like this long to read. This immediately went up in like my top 3 favorite like Gothic stories of all time, like right up there with The Scarlet Letter, which y'all know is my favorite. This book tells the story of an unnamed heroine who falls in love with a very, very mysterious man who comes from a very, very mysterious past. Once they move into his sprawling manor of Manderley, we find out that his ex-wife is more than she initially thought and may or may not be a ghost. And I'm gonna leave it at that as well. I'm assuming most people who are watching this channel have probably read Rebecca or at least seen the films. This book truly, truly blew me away as well. It's one of those Gothic novels where you're not going to sit and read it in one day. There is some dense language in there, but it is so worth it. There was never a moment where I wanted to put the book down. It's not the speediest read, it's not the easiest read, but it is so, so well worth it, and it is so beautiful, and it made me fall in love with Mrs. De Winter. It made me fall in love with Mr. De Winter. It made me absolutely gush over Manderley. And I just want to go to the London countryside and live in a big sprawling manor and look around for ghosts. I adored Rebecca. Blew me away. So my top 3 books, if you watched my channel all year, I'm sure you can guess what they are. And I played around with the order of these a lot. And while my number 3 book has easily gone down in one of the best books I think I have ever read in my life, it was trumped by 2 other books. And the reasoning is because book number 2, I think, really impressed me in a way that I didn't expect it to. And book number 1 just came out of nowhere, and I have spoken about probably in almost every single one of my videos since I have read it, which has not been the case for book number 3. So while book number 3 I do believe to be one of the best books I've ever read, it is probably up in my top 10, hands down, and the other 2 might not be. It did come in the 3rd place today, just because it hasn't had as much of a resounding initial effect on me the way the other 2 did, but I think that later in life this will be the book that I go back towards again and again and again. And that is, at number 3, 5-star read, December Park by Ronald Malfi. This is, of course, another coming-of-age story, also set in the 90s, and it is about a group of 5 teenage boys investigating serial murders occurring in their hometown in Maryland, because it's Ronald Malfi and everything is set in small town Maryland. This is one of the best coming-of-age stories I have ever read. The only story I have read that tops this is It by Stephen King. This is fast-paced, gut-wrenching, beautiful, over-the-top, and just wonderful. This was just such a wonderful and unique read. All of the kids are so, so likable. Like, Adrian just touches my heart the more and more I read about him and the more I learn about his past. I think Angelo was a phenomenal main character without feeling like he had main character syndrome. Like, he did have all of these crazy flaws that led him into certain decisions, but he never felt like Harry Potter, where everything just like worked out for him. This is a book that does not have a happy ending. It's a book with a very bleak ending, and I understand why people find the ending controversial, but you must remember that coming-of-age stories are metaphors. They are not supposed to be taken at face value. They are metaphors for losing your innocence in childhood, and I think this book nails that metaphor better than any other book. And that includes It. I do think that the conclusion of this book really hammers in what it's like and what it feels like to finally grow up and lose that innocence better than It does. And maybe that's because this book is only told through the perspective of children. We don't get the flashbacks of them as adults looking back on their experiences, but I don't think it's necessary with this. And If you can get your hands on a copy of this, I absolutely recommend it. It's been out of print for a while. It recently came back into print from Open Road Media. You can get new copies. Don't know how long it's going to stay in print. I hope it does not go back out of print, but absolutely try and get your hands on this. This book blew me away. I'm saying that a lot. I'm saying that all of these books blew me away, but really these are just like 10 books out of, what, the 71 that I read this year, and these really, really impressed me. And speaking of impressing me, book number 2 is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I can't believe this is my second most beloved book of 2021 because I am not a fan of Stephen Graham Jones. And guys, Grady Hendrix didn't even make it on this list. Paul Tremblay did not make it on this list this year. Like, Riley Sager, like my go-to authors from last year that I was like just obsessed with. Their newest works did not blow me away, and My Heart is a Chainsaw I devoured. And I had to get, and I got an e-reader version of this like back in February, like 9 months before it came out, and I read the thing on my teeny tiny phone screen because I couldn't get a physical copy of the book, and then I did get the physical copy though, and it's signed. But yeah, so this is why this is number 2, because I did not think I was going to like this book, but the premise spoke to me. I generally do not like Stephen Graham Jones' style of writing. I did not like Mongrels. I did not like The Only Good Indians. I did not like Night of the Mannequins. I adored this. Yes, this is the story of slasher film fanatic Jade Daniels, basically trying to convince the town around her that a slasher is about to go down in their tiny, tiny town. And this book is so much more than that. This is one of the most feminist books I've ever read. It is so pro-women. It talks about a lot of topics that are very, very difficult to talk about outside of this media, I would say. And I think Stephen Graham Jones, as an adult man, handles the struggles of teenage women very, very well and in a very mature way. It's also a very open love letter to the slasher genre as a whole. This whole story is just filled with all of Stephen Graham Jones's insane knowledge of slasher history from the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s. I will say, to read this book, you probably want a basic understanding of slashers going into this, primarily the concept of the final girl and the formulas that so many slasher films follow. I, again, don't want to get too much into this book, but if you are a fan of slashers, read this. If you want a really, like, interesting spin on a very feminist outlook, check this book out as well. Which is a weird thing for me to say because I feel like I wasn't expecting that from this. I really just thought this was going to kind of be a gore fest. And while there are moments of gore in this, this is more rooted on the human condition of our main character, Jade, and her interactions with people who don't understand her in a small town. She is kind of like the goth girl, the weird girl, the outcast. And she copes through the difficulties in her life by watching slasher films, which if you've seen any of my Scarapy series, you know that I thoroughly believe that horror media can really benefit the mind and the soul. So yes, number 2 was My Heart is a Chainsaw. All right, and coming in at number 1, I feel like everybody could guess this. The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup. This is hands down the best book I read this year. I talked about this constantly after reading it back in, I think, February. I picked this up on a whim. I literally saw it on a table at Politics and Prose and was like, meh, why not? Let's see. And this blew me away. This is the best crime thriller I've ever read. This is the best Nordic noir story I've ever read. I have never been so taken aback by the killer reveal in anything. The twist ending in this, just mind-boggling. I didn't see it coming, and then the second I read it, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Everything in this book I feel like is plausible. I feel like it could happen. I feel like Soren Sveistrup writes a lot for TV, and he was able to craft a story that reads so well as a novel, but is as action and fast-paced as a television show would be. I wanted to binge this book. It's like 500 pages, and I read it in like 3.5 days. I couldn't put it down. I really couldn't put it down. I watched the entire TV series on Netflix that Soren Sveistrup wrote. It was incredible. The story of this is that there is a serial killer in Copenhagen, and he is attacking women and chopping off their body parts, and he's leaving little tiny chestnut men as his calling card. We have two unlikely paired up detectives working to solve the case, both who really do not want to be involved in solving the case, and yet for some reason just work so well together. I will not give you guys anything beyond that. I will just let you know that this is easily the best book that I read this year. This is also probably going to be up in my top 10 greatest books that I've ever read so far. I've never felt so connected to like wanting to finish a book as I have with this. The reason Clown in a Cornfield was my #1 book last year is because I read the entire thing in a day. I didn't want to put it down. There was no way for me to finish all of this in a day, though I absolutely wanted to. When a book does that for me, that's how I know that I'm hooked. When I feel about a book the way I do about binge watching like an entire TV series in like a weekend, that's how I know that it's really compelling to me. There's something about it that's really grasping my attention. The way that it's written just keeps me fully engrossed, and I need to know what happens. And it's very, very rare for me to actually find a book that I feel is bingeable like this. I will say out of all of the books that I read this year, The Chestnut Man and to an extent My Heart is a Chainsaw were the only two that I really was upset to have to go to sleep for. With Chasing the Boogeyman, it got progressively more like that. I will say that I stayed up for like an extra 2.5 hours after I was supposed to go to bed and had to work the next day to finish Chasing the Boogeyman and like drink coffee so I could finish it. But there was no question in my mind that The Chestnut Man needed to be devoured as quickly as possible, and every moment of The Chestnut Man has stuck with me. It is just memorable. It is unique, which is like a lame word to use about a book because I feel like every book is unique and interesting, but I've just never read anything so well crafted and laid out as The Chestnut Man. So if you're a fan of like SVU, if you're a fan of like Nordic Noir or like Border Town, if you watch that on Netflix, you will love this, I think. And I really hope that Soren Sveistrup has some more stories that come out. I wonder if they're going to do a season 2 on Netflix. I would watch it as long as he's writing it, just because I was so blown away and so impressed by this. Anyways, those are my top 10 reads of 2021. Be on the lookout for my most anticipated reads of 2022 video coming very, very soon. And I think it's interesting that a lot of my very, very anticipated reads from 2021 did not make it onto my best reads of 2021 list. I think only 2 of them did. My Heart is a Chainsaw and Come With Me, which I was not expecting. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you guys for being here for a full year of BookTube. If you enjoy my videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays, and I will see you all in the next one. Mwah.